Un grandissimo applauso a Elise Mertens.
Eala's run in Berlin may have ended one match short of the final, but the real story now is what happens next. Because the clock has barely stopped ticking. Roughly 36 hours. That's all the time separating Eala's semi-final loss on the grass of Berlin's Steffi Graf Stadium from her next challenge on another patch of German grass in Bad Homburg, where she is set to open against Elise Mertens in the first round of a WTA 500 event. And inside that incredibly tight turnaround lies the question that could define this entire stretch of her 2026 season. What do you do with momentum when it gets interrupted just before it peaks? Because make no mistake, what Eala produced in Berlin was not just a good week. It was the kind of run that changes how the tour sees you. She opened by taking down Donna Vekic, the reigning Queen's Club champion, in straight sets 7-5, 6-4. Then came an even bigger statement. World number 2 Elena Rybakina, a two-time Grand Slam champion and one of the most dangerous servers in women's tennis, also fell 7-5, 6-4. In that match, Eala won 19 points on Rybakina's second serve return, more than double Rybakina's total, and exposed one of the biggest players in the game with fearless, proactive tennis. Then in the quarterfinals, she faced world number 8 Elina Svitolina and delivered perhaps her cleanest performance of the week. The scoreline read 6-3, 6-4, but even that doesn't fully capture how composed and in control she looked once she settled into the match. It lasted just 83 minutes, and after the opening stretch, it never truly felt like it was slipping away. 3 matches, 2 top 10 wins, no sets dropped. At 21 years old, the Filipina was playing the best grass-court tennis of her life. And that is exactly why the semi-final loss to Linda Noskova felt so jarring. Not because losing to Noskova is some kind of disaster, it is. Noskova is one of the cleanest ball strikers in the game and one of the most dangerous young players on tour. But because of how suddenly the Berlin story stopped. Eala had built so much momentum, so much intrigue, that it almost felt like the tournament was setting up for something even bigger. Instead, Noskova shut the door fast. She beat Eala 6-2, 6-4 in just over an hour, serving 9 aces and breaking her 4 times. Eala won only 40 of the match's 113 total points, and for one of the few times all week, she looked unable to impose herself. Noskova served through her, rushed her, and dictated from the first strike of too many rallies. It was clinical, it was convincing, and it arrived right at the moment when Eala's Berlin campaign seemed ready to explode into something historic. So now, as she arrives in Bad Homburg, Eala carries 2 very different truths with her. The first is the memory of how extraordinary her tennis looked when everything was clicking, the sharp return positioning, the willingness to step inside the baseline, the confidence to take the ball early and redirect pace into angles that become especially dangerous on grass. The second is the reminder of what happens when an opponent takes that rhythm away. When the serve lands big, the first strike is clean, and Eala is forced to react instead of dictate. Both versions are real. And both happened within the span of 4 days. That matters because physically, this is not a simple reset. Berlin was demanding. 4 matches in 5 days at a WTA 500 event, including 3 against top-level opposition, takes something out of any player, no matter how much adrenaline is still pumping through the system. Grass-court tennis may produce shorter points, but the mental intensity and explosive movement are brutal, especially when every match is played at the edge of your timing. Which brings us to Elise Mertens, and why treating this first-round match as a routine opener would be a serious mistake. On paper, Mertens may not carry the same headline value as the names Eala just beat in Berlin. She isn't a reigning slam champion. She isn't a top 2 seed. She doesn't overwhelm opponents with one giant weapon, but that's exactly what makes her dangerous. Because Mertens is the kind of player who can make a match feel deceptively manageable right up until the scoreboard says otherwise. Let's start with her grass court form this season. 2 weeks ago, Mertens returned to Hertogenbosch to defend the title she won there in 2025, her first career singles title on grass and the 10th singles title of her career overall. The title run last year had been one of the wildest of her career, featuring an astonishing 11 match points saved across the tournament. This year, The defense started well enough. She beat Bianca Andreescu 6-1, 6-3 in the opening round, looking sharp and composed. But in the round of 16, she ran into Elena Gabriela Ruse and lost 6-3, 6-3 in a rematch of the previous year's final. It was a frustrating defeat, not just because she had beaten Ruse for the title 12 months earlier, but because Ruse's flat hitting and refusal to give Mertens rhythm made the Belgian look more passive than she usually does at her best. Then came Berlin. Mertens opened against Lyudmila Samsonova and looked in serious trouble early, dropping the first set 1-6 in a performance that suggested her stay in the draw might be brief. But then she flipped the match completely. She took the second set 6-3, stormed through the third 6-0, and pulled off one of the more dramatic turnarounds of the week. The next round, though, was a different story. Marketa Vondrausova handled her 6-1, 6-4, and Berlin was over. So Mertens arrives in Bad Homburg with a 3-2 grass court record for 2026. Not bad, not dominant, somewhere in the middle. And in many ways, that has been the story of Elise Mertens' singles career. Not always spectacular, but consistently dangerous. She is currently ranked world number 24, and that ranking reflects exactly what she has built over the years. A career based less on dramatic peaks and more on relentless steadiness, smart point construction, and the ability to make opponents uncomfortable for 2 solid hours. But there's another layer here, and it matters. Mertens has played Eala before. And she didn't just win, she won decisively. Back in October 2023 at the Jasmine Open in Monastir, Tunisia, Mertens beat a much younger and far less experienced Eala 7-5, 6-0. That second set is the part that lingers, a bagel. In the first set, Eala had competed well. She stayed close. She showed flashes. But once Mertens sensed the opening, she shut the match down with ruthless efficiency. And she did it in classic Mertens fashion, not by blowing Eala off the court with raw power, but by using depth, precision, and experience. By taking time away without appearing to overhit. By making the court feel smaller and the rally feel heavier than it looks from the outside. Of course, that was a very different version of Alex Eala. At the time, she was still trying to establish herself at tour level, still learning how to manage the emotional and tactical swings of matches against seasoned WTA veterans. The Eala we saw in Berlin this week is not that player anymore. This version has now beaten top 10 players multiple times. This version won the Birmingham title just 2 weeks ago, coming back from a set down against Marketa Vondrausova in the final to win 5-7, 6-3, 7-5. This version owns a 15-8 career record on grass, a 65.2% win rate, and has developed into one of the more dangerous grass court players in her ranking tier. Her career-high ranking of world number 29, reached in March after a 4th-round run at Indian Wells, tells part of the story. But the ranking doesn't fully capture the speed of the improvement. The distance between the player who lost 7-5, 6-0 to Mertens in Tunisia and the player who beat Rybakina and Svitolina on back-to-back days in Berlin is massive. It's not just about ranking points. It's about presence, belief, shot tolerance, and tactical clarity. Eala is no longer just a promising young player with flashes of upside. She's becoming someone opponents have to actively prepare for, and that's why this match is so fascinating. Because tactically, Mertens presents a very different kind of challenge from the one Eala just faced in Berlin. At 30 years old, Mertens knows exactly who she is as a player. She hits relatively flat off both wings, especially off the backhand, and uses depth extremely well to pin opponents behind the baseline. She's one of the better returners on tour, someone who can neutralize even strong first serves and immediately put pressure on second serves. Her hands at the net are excellent, sharpened by one of the best doubles careers in the modern women's game. She is a 6-time Grand Slam doubles champion and one of the smartest transition players on the WTA Tour. She doesn't need to overpower you, she just needs to get the rally onto her terms. And if Eala is even slightly flat physically after Berlin, that's where Mertens can become dangerous. She can absorb pace, redirect it, and drag opponents into uncomfortable patterns where every point feels one shot longer than you want it to be. She's not going to hand Eala the kind of second serves or short neutral balls that Rybakina and Svitolina gave up at key moments in Berlin. Eala, on the other hand, has a very clear path if she wants to come through this. She has to keep the match on the front foot. That means attacking second serves, taking time away early in rallies, and refusing to let Mertens settle into those long, balanced exchanges where the Belgian's decision-making becomes such a weapon. Eala's best tennis on grass this month has come when she has stepped forward, trusted her return, and struck with conviction off the first 2 balls. If she starts drifting too far behind the baseline or playing too cautiously, Mertens will take over the geometry of the match. The serve will be critical too, not just in terms of raw percentage, but in terms of what Eala gets off the first shot after it. Against Noskova, Eala struggled to protect her service games because she was constantly under pressure from the return and couldn't win enough cheap points. Against Mertens, she may not face the same pure power, but she will face a player who reads patterns well and punishes predictability. So this opening round in Bad Homburg is about much more than simply bouncing back from a semi-final loss. It's about whether Eala can do the hardest thing in professional tennis, reset emotionally and physically in almost no time, against an opponent experienced enough to punish any dip in level. Because the temptation after Berlin is to focus only on what Eala has already proven, and to be fair, she has proven a lot. She has shown she can beat elite players on grass. She has shown that her game translates to this surface at a high level. She has shown that when she is confident and fresh, she can take the racket out of the hands of players ranked far above her. But Bad Homburg asks a different question. Can she do it again when the legs are heavier? Can she do it when the emotional high of a breakthrough week has already been interrupted by a loss? Can she walk into a first-round match with almost no time to recover, face a veteran who has already beaten her badly once, and still find the level required to move forward? That's what makes this match so compelling. Not because it carries the glamour of a semi-final or the shock value of a top 10 upset, but because it sits at the crossroads of momentum and resilience. Berlin proved how dangerous Eala can be when the game is flowing. Bad Homburg will tell us something different, how quickly she can regroup, how deeply she believes in the version of herself that emerged this grass court season, and whether this recent surge is simply a hot run or the beginning of something more durable. The answer starts now, on another German grass court, with almost no time to breathe world in doubles, and that matters here more than it might seem at first glance. Because doubles excellence gives Elise Mertens something many pure baseliners simply do not have, a natural instinct for the front of the court. She is comfortable finishing points at the net in a way that comes only from years of repetition, from thousands of doubles points where closing forward was not optional, but essential. That kind of touch, that kind of confidence in transition becomes especially valuable on grass. More than any other surface, grass rewards the player who understands that moving forward is not a gamble, it's a tactical decision. It rewards clean volleys, decisive footwork, and the willingness to shorten points before the rally has a chance to settle. On clay, you can survive a hesitant approach. On hard court, you can sometimes get away with staying neutral. On grass, hesitation gets exposed. And that's part of why Mertens has said publicly that grass is her favorite surface. First, that might sound surprising. Only one of her 10 career singles titles has come on grass. She is not the first name people think of when they picture elite grass court tennis, but stylistically, the fit makes sense. Her flatter ball trajectory, which can sometimes lose bite on clay where topspin-heavy exchanges stretch points and push opponents back, becomes far more effective on grass. The ball stays low. It skids through. It rushes opponents into contact before they are fully set. And nowhere is that more useful than on her backhand side. Mertens' backhand has long been the cleaner and more reliable wing of her game, and on grass it becomes even more dangerous because the bounce stays below the waist. That lets her drive through the court, redirect pace, and keep opponents uncomfortable without having to manufacture huge amounts of spin or power. She doesn't need the ball to sit up for her. She wants it low, fast, and awkward, exactly what grass provides. But here, where this matchup gets interesting, because Eala's grass court game has evolved to the point where those same conditions now work for her too. Eala's return of serve has always been one of the more promising parts of her game, even back when her overall results were still inconsistent. On hard courts, it was already a weapon. On grass, it has become something more dangerous because the surface rewards players who can read the serve early, trust their instincts, and commit to aggressive positioning without hesitation. And in Berlin, that return game was one of the biggest reasons her run became so explosive. Against Elena Rybakina, one of the biggest servers in women's tennis, a player who can make service games disappear in a blur, Eala won 58.3% of second serve return points. That number is absurd when you consider the quality of the opponent. You do not do that by accident. You do it by reading patterns early, taking away time, and stepping into returns with complete conviction. Then against Elina Svitolina, a player whose whole identity is built on making you suffer through long, uncomfortable baseline exchanges, Eala refused to let the match settle into that kind of rhythm. She took the ball early, flattened out her ground strokes, and kept redirecting the pace before Svitolina could build the rallies she wanted. Instead of allowing the match to become a test of endurance and patience, Eala turned it into a contest of initiative. That is what makes this first-round meeting with Mertens so tactically compelling, because in many ways, this is almost a mirror match. Both players want to rob their opponent of time. Both hit relatively flat through the court. Both return well. Both are capable of finishing at the net. Both prefer to keep points on their own terms rather than absorb and react. The similarities are real. What separates them, at least on paper, are three things: experience, freshness, and confidence. Start with experience, because the gap there is impossible to ignore. Elise Mertens has played 788 career WTA singles matches. 788. That number alone tells you how much tennis she has seen, how many match situations she has lived through, how many moments of pressure, momentum swings, and tactical puzzles she has already solved in real time. She has reached a Grand Slam semi-final. She has beaten former world number ones. She has won titles on 3 different surfaces. She has carried Belgium in Billie Jean King Cup competition, where her 13-7 record reflects a player comfortable performing under national expectation and team pressure. Eala simply does not have that volume of experience yet. She is only 21. She is in just her 3rd full season on the WTA Tour. And while Berlin showed that she can absolutely trade blows with the best players in the world on grass, doing it for one electric week and doing it over the course of an entire season are 2 very different challenges. But if the experience gap leans heavily toward Mertens, the more immediate variable may be physical freshness. And that is where this match could turn. Mertens has not had a particularly draining build-up to Bad Homburg. Her early exit in Berlin gave her something Eala did not get. Time to recover, time to practice, time to reset physically and mentally, time to prepare specifically for this next tournament instead of sprinting straight from one high-stakes week into another. Eala, by contrast, arrives carrying the mileage of a genuine deep run. 4 matches in 5 days, 3 wins over elite opposition, 2 consecutive battles against top 10 players. A semifinal at WTA 500 level. That is a serious workload, even for a 21-year-old whose body can usually bounce back quickly. And on grass, fatigue doesn't always show up in dramatic ways. Sometimes it appears in details so small they are easy to miss. But at this level, those details decide matches. The first step to the wide ball becomes half a beat slower. The split-step timing on the return drifts by a fraction. The legs don't load quite as explosively on serve. The contact point arrives just a little late. The recovery after the backhand down the line takes a split second longer. On grass, where points move quickly and balance is constantly being tested, those tiny delays can be the difference between controlling a rally and scrambling through it. They can be the difference between getting the racket out in front and getting jammed, between taking the return early and blocking it back defensively, between holding serve at 30-all and suddenly facing break point. And that is exactly why this match has upset potential in both directions. If Eala is physically fresh enough to play with the same sharpness she showed in Berlin, then her upside in this matchup is enormous. She has already shown she can hurt elite players on grass with first-strike tennis, fearless returning, and the kind of shot-making that forces opponents to defend before they are ready. If that version of Eala shows up, Mertens could spend the afternoon trying to contain momentum she cannot fully slow down. But if Eala's legs are heavy, if the emotional drop after the Noskova loss lingers, or if her level dips even slightly in the opening stages, Mertens is exactly the kind of opponent who can turn that into a long, frustrating day. Because Mertens doesn't need a collapse from the other side to win. She only needs a few openings. She needs a few second serves to attack, a few short balls to redirect, a few service games where the feet are not quite as lively as they were 2 days ago. A few moments where the younger player hesitates and the veteran does not. That's the trap in this matchup. It may not have the headline drama of Eala versus Rybakina or the emotional weight of Eala versus Svitolina, but it may actually be one of the most revealing matches of this stretch. Not because of who Mertens is in the rankings, but because of what she tests. She tests discipline. She tests physical recovery. She tests whether Eala can generate her own intensity after an emotionally exhausting week. And she tests whether Eala's recent rise on grass is strong enough to survive not just elite shot makers, but also experienced tacticians who know how to turn one small dip into an entire losing set. That's what makes this opening round so important. Berlin was about proving that Alex Eala belongs on this stage. Bad Homburg is about proving she can stay their serve. They sound like tiny details, and they are, but on grass, tiny details become everything. That's the cruelty of this surface. The margin for error is already razor-thin, so even the smallest dip in timing gets magnified. A split step that lands half a beat late, a first serve that misses by an inch, a recovery step that isn't quite explosive enough. On clay, you can sometimes survive those mistakes by extending the rally and finding another way back into the point. On grass, the point may already be over before you get that chance. And there is another layer to this week in Bad Homburg that makes Alex Eala's story even more fascinating. She isn't here just for singles. She has also been handed a wild card into the doubles draw, and not with just anyone. She'll be partnering Venus Williams. Take a second and let that pairing register. A 21-year-old from Manila sharing the court with a 46-year-old, 5-time Wimbledon singles champion. The generational contrast is extraordinary. Venus won her first Wimbledon title in 2000, years before Eala was even born, and now the two of them are set to walk onto the same side of the net in one of the final chapters of Williams' career. Because that's part of the context here too, Venus is playing these doubles events as part of a farewell stretch, returning to the grass courts that once defined her greatness. For Eala, this is obviously more than a scheduling footnote. It's the kind of opportunity that stays with a young player. The chance to share a court, a locker room, and a tactical conversation with one of the sport's most iconic champions. The chance to watch up close how longevity looks, how poise looks, how a player who has lived through every kind of pressure still carries herself inside the lines. That experience has value, but it also comes with a practical complication. It means Eala's physical and mental energy this week is being split across 2 draws at a tournament that sits just 1 week before Wimbledon. Every doubles match adds minutes to the legs. Every practice session, every tactical adjustment, every emotional investment in a second event is energy that cannot be devoted entirely to singles. And that matters because Eala's team knows exactly what the real target is. Wimbledon begins on June 29. Everything happening right now is preparation, positioning, calibration. The goal is not just to survive Bad Homburg. The goal is to arrive in London with rhythm, confidence, and enough physical freshness left to attack the biggest grass court event in the world. So when Eala and Elise Mertens walk onto the court on Sunday, what exactly will decide this match? Most likely, it comes down to the return games. Both players should be capable of holding serve at a reasonable rate. Grass naturally gives servers a boost, and both Eala and Mertens have improved enough on serve in 2026 to stay competitive in their delivery games. Neither woman is likely to dominate purely through serving, but neither is likely to be broken over and over unless something goes badly wrong. That means the real battle will happen in the margins, in the 2 or 3 breakpoint chances each player is likely to earn, and those moments may tell us everything. Mertens has built an entire career on navigating pressure well. Time and again, she has found ways to produce her best tennis in the most delicate moments. Her resume is full of tight wins, escapes, and momentum swings that she somehow bent back in her favor. The most dramatic example remains her title run in Hertogenbosch last year, when she saved 11 match points across the tournament and still found a way to lift the trophy. That is not luck. That is a player who knows how to live inside the biggest points without panicking. Eala, by contrast, tends to create pressure rather than absorb it. Her return game, especially on grass, can suffocate opponents by constantly forcing them to hit one extra ball under duress. But she is still young enough and still new enough to this level that scoreboard moments can sometimes test her nerve. The memory of the Eastbourne final last year, where she failed to convert 4 championship points against Maya Joint, still lingers as one of those reminders that learning how to finish is often the last and hardest lesson. That's why the first set of this match may tell us almost everything we need to know. If Eala comes out sharp, if she returns with the same depth and commitment she showed against Rybakina, and if her legs have recovered enough from Berlin to move laterally with the urgency grass demands, then she absolutely has the game to take control from the baseline. Mertens is not going to overpower her. That's not how Mertens wins. She wins by outmaneuvering, by outlasting. By waiting for the rally to tilt just slightly in her favor and then punishing the mistake with precision rather than force. She waits for the shorter ball. She waits for the mistimed serve. She waits for the opponent to rush one neutral forehand. Then suddenly the backhand down the line is skidding away, the angle is open, and the point is gone before you fully register how it happened. That was the formula that worked in Monaster in 2023. The question now is whether Eala has improved enough, and more importantly, whether she has become grass-court confident enough to deny Mertens the rhythm she needs to execute that plan again. If I'm watching one thing early, it's Eala's first serve percentage in the opening 4 games. In Berlin, her serve was not the shot that carried her. The return was. The return was what unlocked the upsets, what created scoreboard pressure, what let her take control against bigger names. But against Mertens, whose return game is among the strongest parts of her arsenal, Eala cannot afford a shaky start on serve. She especially cannot afford the kind of opening set wobble she showed in the Birmingham final, when she dropped the first set before eventually finding her range and turning the match around. On grass, spotting an experienced player like Mertens an early lead can become a compounding problem, because once Mertens gets comfortable, the match gets complicated. Her ground strokes settle deeper into the court. The sliced backhand stays lower. The occasional drop shot starts appearing at exactly the right moment. The approach shot becomes harder to read because it arrives only after she has already established enough rhythm to disguise it. She doesn't overwhelm you with one huge shot. She just keeps expanding the tactical menu until you feel like you're defending a different problem every 2 points. There is also the matter of transition, not between points, but between tournaments. Berlin and Bad Homburg are both grass events, yes, but grass is not a uniform surface. The pace can vary. The bounce can vary. The way the ball skids through the court can change depending on weather, where, and even time of day. Players talk all the time about needing a few games to calibrate their timing when they switch venues, even if the surface is technically the same. For Eala, that adjustment window is compressed almost to the breaking point. She is arriving in Bad Homburg with less than 48 hours between her final match in Berlin and her opening match here. There hasn't been much time to practice, much time to feel the court, much time to settle into the new environment. If her timing is off early, it may not be because she's playing badly. It may simply be because she hasn't had enough hours to absorb the shift. And that is why I think this match will be much tighter than the rankings alone might suggest. Mertens at world number 24 is not sitting in a completely different universe from Eala at world number 35. These are 2 players in roughly the same competitive band, but arriving here from very different angles. Mertens needs this result to rebuild momentum after a short Berlin stay. Eala needs it to prove that Berlin was not just a one-week spark, but the beginning of a real and sustainable grass-court identity. Both need the match practice before Wimbledon. Neither can afford to treat it like just another first round. And hanging over all of it is that Monaster meeting from 2023, the ghost in this draw. Eala remembers what it felt like when Mertens took control of that match. She remembers the 6-0 second set. She remembers what it felt like to compete for a while and then suddenly get swept off the court by a veteran who knew exactly how to turn one opening into total control. But she also knows, with the clarity that only recent results can provide, that she is no longer that player. The Birmingham title is real. The Rybakina win is real. The Svitolina performance is real. Those are not abstract credentials or nice talking points for a pre-match graphic. They are evidence. Evidence that Eala's game has crossed into a new category. Evidence that her grass-court instincts are no longer theoretical. Evidence that she can walk onto this surface and make elite players uncomfortable. Now comes the harder part. making that evidence matter against someone who will not be intimidated by it, someone who has seen younger players arrive with momentum before, someone who understands exactly how to make a match feel smaller, slower, and heavier than the moment the other player wants it to be. That is why this is such a compelling grass court match. Two smart, flat-hitting, tactically aware players. A first-round clash that feels more like a quarterfinal, a WTA 500 sitting in the shadow of Wimbledon, but carrying far more significance than its calendar slot might suggest. One player trying to prove her breakthrough is real, the other trying to remind the field that experience still matters. So if you're tuning in to Bad Homburg, don't look at this as just another opening round match. Look at it for what it actually is, a test of recovery, a test of growth. A test of whether Eala's surge on grass is strong enough to survive the kind of opponent who knows exactly how to expose any weakness that fatigue leaves behind. Because by the time this week is over, the result may tell us far more than who simply advanced to round 2. It may tell us how dangerous Eala is about to be at Wimbledon.